Our theme for Vacation Bible School was God's creation, digging for truth. And our adult classes were taught by different people each night, but they were all very good. And they were all dealing with themes revolving around creation and evolution, and really get to the heart of which one is true. Because you can read even in the scientific journals and even in the evolutionary publications, anytime they mention creationism, or anytime they mention an alternative to naturalistic evolution, everybody recognizes there are only two possibilities. Either everything we see and all life that we know came about through natural processes, or it came about through a supernatural process. It's one or the other. Natural only or supernatural imposed upon the natural. What that means is creation, supernatural, or evolution, natural only. We saw different people and a lot of different teachers who specifically reject creationism, and they will often tell you why they reject it, because they don't want it to be true. And so they define science by saying that science can only look at natural causes, and scientific inquiry necessarily excludes supernatural causes. So they define science to exclude the other side. And then they say, we can't adequately investigate our explanation because it occurs over such a long period of time. Your side doesn't count because we can't investigate the supernatural. Our side is right, but we can't investigate it either. I want to tell you the truth about why people deny creation and why science, evolutionary science, is so doggedly determined to say that it cannot be through supernatural means. And the reason they will not even consider it, the reason they define science to exclude the supernatural, is because of the implications of creation. Because of what creation implicitly means about all of life, makes people desperate for it to be untrue. Desperate to say that there is another explanation, even though that other explanation is absurd and illogical. So I want to talk about just 2 or 3 implications of creation this morning. The number one most obvious implication of creation, if creation is true, then this implication also has to be true, and that is that God exists. Think of a great work of art. And art can be a painting, it can be a sculpture, it can be a book, a movie, it can be all sorts of different things can be described as art. Mount Rushmore is art. You know, there's a lot of different things. But if you think of just a painting, if you think of Norman Rockwell painting a picture of himself where he's leaning out from behind the canvas and painting his own face, and his back painting himself into the painting, it's a very accessible piece of art. But you know that all the paint on that canvas, that all of the color in that paint, that the lines that he draws and the things that you see because of the paint and the color and the lines that he uses on this piece of canvas, you know that all of those things are subject to the painting, to Norman Rockwell. And you know that Norman Rockwell was greater than the paint that he put on that canvas. And you know that he has to be a skillful person just to draw a person on a piece of canvas that you can recognize. That testifies to his own skill. The artist, the creator of the art, by definition, has to be greater than the artwork itself. So, if there is creation of the heavens and the earth, as Genesis 1:1 says, then we know that the creator of the heavens and the earth has to be greater than the heavens and the earth. And everything in the heavens and the earth has to be subject to that creator. Just like everything on that canvas is subject to that painter. Just like everything on Mount Rushmore is subject to the guys who carved it out. Just like every word in the Grapes of Wrath is subject to John Steinbeck. That's how creation works. It's absolutely necessary that it be that way. So this means that there is a God. If creation is true, this necessarily requires that there is a God who is greater than space and time, who not only understands, but actually designed genetics, geology, astronomy, physics, biology, geology, all of it. He's greater than the sum total of all of it. It's a magnificent implication of creation. Now, you think of a power like that, or you think of an artwork, you think of a character in a book, or you think of a puppy on one of Norman Rockwell's paintings, or you think of whatever the case may be. You think about Mona Lisa's eyes following you no matter where you go. All of those things in those pieces of artwork are there because that's where the artist wanted them. Because that's where the creator wanted them. And it's his taste, it's his decision, it's his absolute right to determine what to put there, what not to put there, and even to rewrite it, even to change it. An artist who's writing a book has absolute authority to go back and erase part of what he's written. Now, if there's a creation, the creator stands in exactly the same position to change it, to redo it, to judge it, to decide on its quality. People revolt at the thought that there is a creator with the authority to judge. Creation requiring the fact that God exists, who is greater than all of the universe, who has the authority to judge, also implies that there are objective standards of right and wrong. Because not only did God create the heavens and the earth, not only did He create biology and genetics and DNA, not only did He create all of the life and all of the non-life that we see, He also created morality. He also created this inherent sense that everybody has of right and wrong. And atheists and the ungodly will argue that the sense of right and wrong and what is right and what is wrong is relative to what people think at the time. And they will say that what a society decides is right and wrong decides what's right and wrong. But if there is a creation, and if there is a creator who instilled and created the sense of right and wrong, morality, good and evil, then there is an objective standard of right and wrong, good and evil, outside of how a society perceives it. Different than and not decided by what everybody thinks. And people who want something wrong to be right, therefore revolt at the idea of an objective standard, and therefore have to revolt at the idea of a creator, because the idea of a creator necessarily implies an objective standard. And so people will believe the ridiculous to avoid the obvious fact of the creator, because of the implication that if there is a creation, there must be a creator. Ephesians 1 verse 11 says, according to his purpose, who works all things after the counsel of his will. Everything in the universe is subject to and works according to the counsel of God's will, not man's will. Not man's will. Romans 8:28, we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Everything in the universe is subject to God's purpose. But there is a creation, which means there is a God, and it means that everything in the universe is subject to God's purpose. There's no other conclusion that one can draw once one realizes the truth of creation. God exists. Number 2, free will actually exists. 2008, Ben Stein released a documentary, and it was in the theaters, and we actually watched it in our Sunday school class a couple of years ago and talked about the different arguments made in that movie. It's called Expelled, No Intelligence Allowed. And it's about the drumming out of the scientific community, of any people involved in the scientific community who are willing to consider the idea of intelligent design, who are willing to consider the falsehood of evolution and naturalistic evolution. And he goes through different people who have been ostracized and lost positions, and this enforced theology of atheism that undergirds the scientific community. But one of the things that I found most interesting in this movie, and that I don't think I fully appreciated before I saw it, was the fact that evolution, naturalistic evolution, requires the belief that there is no free will. Evolution says that everything, every choice you make, everything you do, is actually a naturalistic process of chemicals and electricity, certain physical phenomena in your body and in your brain. And so on that basis, you can't actually criticize anybody's choices, because his choices were predetermined by the physical functions of his body. But then by the same token, you can't criticize those who would punish behavior, because they're punishing that behavior is simply the process of the physical things going on in their body. But at its heart, it says nobody is actually answerable for his own conduct, because he can't control what's going on in his body. He can't control anything. Everything that he does, and his perception of his free will, is actually a mirage.